Okay, day 18. The Heart of a Small Boy, August 5th, 2006. For a science fiction or fantasy writer, there is no bigger honor than being named Guest of Honor at the World Science Fiction Convention. Yes, I know the field has other awards for lifetime achievement, most notably SFWA's Grandmaster Award, but for me, that will always rank second. The honor comes with an obligation, however. You have to give a speech at the con. Of course, any writer who's been around for a few years has probably given dozens of speeches at regional cons and book signings, in addition to sitting on hundreds of panels, so none of us are exactly strangers to public speaking. Some writers have a standard speech for all occasions, a one-size-fits-all sort of talk. Others write a new speech every year or two. Some wing it. If you are really hard up and or lazy, you can even take the questions from the audience or ask to do an interview instead of a speech. I confess, I've resorted to all of these dodges in my time at one con or another. A worldcon is different, though. It's the biggest honor most of us will ever get, unless the Pulitzer Fair or the Nobel Prize Santa Claus somehow takes note of us, and requires a real speech. Something major, memorable, substantive. A speech with some meat on its bones. Probably Robert A. Heinlein's fault. At the first of his 3 Worldcon Guest of Honorships in 1941, he set the template with this famous time-binding speech and gave fans something to talk about for years. The speech he gave at his 3rd Guest of Honorship in 1976 was rambling and incoherent and ended abruptly mid-sentence when the alarm clock on his podium went off. But never mind, the third time can't always be the charm, and Robert A. Heinlein was not in the best of health by then. My own Worldcon Guest of Honorship was in 2003 at TorCon 3. I began agonizing over the right topic for that speech from the moment Toronto won the bid, and I worked on the text on and off for most of the year leading up to the convention, which might explain why I was so cheesed off when Locust reported afterward that I hadn't given a speech, but did an interview instead. For the record, I gave a speech and an interview. I wasn't too thrilled by the small room that TorCon put me in either, a far cry from the grand ballrooms where the guests of honor always spoke when I first started attending cons in the early 70s. Never mind, though, it wasn't my intention to complain but to praise. I've gotten my copies of a new anthology from ISFIC Press, edited by Mike Resnick and Joe Ciclari. Worldcon Guest of Honor Speeches it's called, and I'm astonished that no one thought of doing this sort of book earlier. Resnick and Ciclari collect 31 Guest of Honor speeches in one attractive hardbound package from Frank R. Paul's address at the very first Worldcon in 1939 to Christopher Priest's talk at the last year's Glasgow Con. Heinlein's famous 1941 speech is here, but not his 1976 speech, mercifully, along with Philip Jose Farmer's infamous 1968 speech, 2 talks by the late, great Robert Bloch, and speeches from such luminaries such as Theodore Sturgeon, Donald A. Wollheim, Fritz Leiber, Doc Smith, Robert Silverberg, Harlan Ellison, and so many others, all too many of whom are no longer with us. Even Hugo Gernsback himself is represented, the man for whom the Hugo Awards are named. Ciclari and Resnick have also included my own TorCon speech, The Heart of a Small Boy. So if you're one of those who couldn't squeeze into that cramped little room in Toronto, or one of those who believe Locust thought I did not give a speech, here is your chance to read what I said. The book is not complete, alas. There are many missing speeches, as are included, sad to say, and some of those may be well lost to us. That is certainly understandable when we're talking about the 40s and 50s, half a century ago. Most of those writers are dead, and it may be that no one thought to write down what they said. Most puzzling, however, is the fact that the entire decade of the 90s seems to be missing, save for Joe Haldeman's speech from the 1990 Worldcon in The Hague. Those writers are still around mostly, and you'd think that some of them would have saved the text of their speeches. Oh well, that's a cavil, and we can hope that some of these talks will turn up in the future and make for a great second edition. But Ciclari and Resnick have given us is good enough. If you're interested in the history of SF, history of Worldcons, history of fandom, or would just like to sample the words and thoughts of some of the giants who built this field, this is a book you need to have. I imagine there will be copies available at this year's Worldcon in LA. Those not planning to attend can order this from the ISFIC Press website at this link. And speaking of the LA Con 4, Connie Willis is the guest of honor at that one. You won't want to miss her speech, I promise you. I don't know what her subject will be, but knowing Connie, she's been working on the speech for 2 years, and it's sure to be as provocative as it is hilarious, and I'm certain that LA Con will give her a room big enough to hold everyone who wants to hear her. Current mood, null. Yay, another Toronto mention, very cool. And, maybe I'll check out the speech I mean, I'm sure I don't need to buy the book to do that. I can probably find it online. Anyways, that was The Heart of a Small Boy. See you guys next time.